and we have got the lovely Hannah Solito. Yes, from the book Radiant. I'm so chuffed to have you on,
I'm
Hannah.
so happy to be here. It's
I
exciting.
know. I've been following you on Instagram, absolutely, since you brought the book out, Radiant, this one.
Yay.
And I think it was a lady called Sally Kay that recommended that I follow you. And it was about skin conditions, obviously psoriasis and all that sort of stuff. And I just kept following you. And then I think it was a week ago, I approached you and said, have you thought about whether you'd like to come on my lives? And I almost fell off my seat when you said, yeah, sure. And I was just in such shock. And it's so nice to see you in person. It really,
well, you know,
really
I always think that if you can share your story with anybody out there in the world, it just takes one person to share that story with somebody they know who's struggling with their skin. And that could be a life-changing moment for that person. So any opportunity I get to sort of tell my story and share what's worked for me and what's now working for thousands of other people, I think is just brilliant. So I'm really happy to have been invited to speak.
Oh, no, it's brilliant. It really, really is. So you're the author of the book Radiant that I just showed. You were on Dragon's Den and managed to get 2 investors in to your business, I guess that's the right way to say it. And
Yeah.
you've got a new book out
I have.
called Skin Healing Expert that's got loads and loads of recipes. So
yeah, so Radiant is very all in with a 28-day program for healing skin. And the feedback that I got from some people was, I've failed the program, I've not managed to complete the program. And the last thing I want people to feel like when they're already struggling with, you know, a chronic disease of any sort is that they're a failure in any way. So Skin Healing Expert is a much more gentle, gradual, step-by-step process whereby you can just incorporate little bits at a time. If doing everything at once feels too overwhelming, I'm quite an all or nothing sort of person, but I realized that not everybody's brain works that way, and actually for some people step by step is much better. So that's where the 2 books sort of differ from one another, and obviously lots more recipes, lots more skincare tips, lots more advice actually on our mental health, so meditation and the importance of sleep and all those things that can have an impact on our gut, which is really crucial when it comes to healing skin.
Fantastic. So can I take you back on a journey right the way back to the very beginning, Hannah, and when you had a skin disorder? Because a lot of people don't realize I've had it, still get it, right? And they don't realize the implications of how it can affect someone personally. So can you talk about, first of all, what it was like when you had the skin condition, so it makes other people aware of how to treat them?
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? I started as a teenager, so I got acne as a teenager, which so many, you know, 13, 14-year-olds do. And I guess I just accepted it as a natural part of my growing up. But it didn't help that my best friend at school had absolutely flawless skin. So I remember sitting in her attic bedroom and she had all the makeup out and she was doing me a makeover. And I remember sort of wanting to cake my face in foundation. And there she was, sat right beside these massive Velux windows with all the natural light streaming in. And her skin was just so pretty and glowing. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm troweling the makeup on here to try and get some sort of even complexion. And so I was really conscious of it, really sort of aware that my skin wasn't as perfect as all these other people around me. And then age 15, with a lot of stress and my GCSE exams pending, the rest of my body just went absolutely crazy. And it essentially looked like I had a case of chicken pox. You know, there were all these little red dots all over the surface of my skin. And my doctor at first misdiagnosed it as scabies, which didn't sound very pleasant. But then looking back, he prescribed me antibiotics, which in theory were meant to kill the infection and subsequently get rid of the skin condition. It's possibly the worst thing he could have done because, as I've now learned, antibiotics strip away so much more of the beneficial gut bacteria. But of course, at the time, I thought it was the right thing to do. And I thought, I'm just going to have to take this 1 week long course of pills and my skin will be miraculously better. And then I went back when that didn't happen and said to my doctor, it's not worked. Could you give me something else? And they eventually diagnosed it as a condition called psoriasis. And I still remember sitting in the GP's office with him saying, and we don't have a cure for that. Thinking, as a stubborn teenager, come on, just give me the cream, give me the pill, give me whatever it takes, and I will take it and this will go away, because of course there's a cure. Don't be ridiculous. And for the following 20 years, I realized that he was absolutely right. There was no cure. And it was a real cycle of steroid creams, prescription emollients, coal tar shampoos, all the treatments that anybody with a skin condition has probably been through, some of which at times sort of seemed to have an effect, but there wasn't really anything tangible where I could say, oh, I put that on and it works. And each time I stopped with any of this, so when I took a break from the steroid creams or didn't want to apply the thick, greasy Dipra-based ointments anymore, my skin would just flare up twice as badly. I just felt like I was in this awful, vicious circle. And of course, it didn't just have an impact in a physical sense. The skin condition was painful and itchy and it hurt, but the mental health aspect, you know, the fact that I was stressed constantly, I couldn't enjoy summer wedding invitations because I used to dread going to the high street shops to look for something with long sleeves in the height of summer, just anything to cover my skin up. It was on my arms, it was visible on my legs. I used to get those natural tan, you know, 30 denier tights from Marks and Spencer's to try and disguise the red patches on my legs. Anything to cover up. And in the height of summer, you know, the gorgeous weather that we've had here in the UK today, I'd have still been covered up. I'd have had a cashmere cardigan on. I'd have done anything so that someone didn't comment or say something about my skin. And it affected my friendships, my social life, my dating, my job, because at times it was so painful that I struggled to sleep. And then my last flare 6 years ago was absolutely horrendous. So that covered most of my body, and it was as if my skin was burnt, and it was so itchy and so painful, and it did stop me sleeping, and I would wake up 8 times a night, and I was so exhausted, and I was just so depressed and emotional with it all as well, which really didn't help. You know, this whole perpetual cycle of feeling terrible, of not being able to sleep, of eating badly, of drinking more alcohol, anything and everything to kind of try and deal with this skin condition. And I went back to my doctor and I said, look, you know, the steroid creams aren't working. We need to look at something stronger. And he then suggested a medication called methotrexate. And methotrexate is a chemotherapy drug. And so again, I found myself sitting in my GP's office thinking, you know, this is impacting so many different aspects of my life, but do I really need a cancer medication to get my health and my skin back on track? And the side effects, they test you on a regular basis for liver failure every fortnight to ensure that your organs are functioning correctly. And I just thought, this isn't a route I want to go down. It frightened me more than anything. And I just wasn't brave enough to take that step. And so I went home, I said I'd think about it, and just began to think there has got to be another way. My body cannot be in this dire situation for the rest of my life, whereby I need to suppress my immune system rather than suppress it. Why are we not looking at regulating it, on getting things back on an even keel? And that's when my research led me into food and lifestyle change and all these things that for many years I'd been told by my doctor would have absolutely no positive impact whatsoever. And I started to think, actually, there is something in this. I read other people's stories. I began to research the impact of food on all aspects of chronic disease. And I thought, actually, I'm going to make a change because there is something I can do about this. And that was really where the transformation, my journey began 6 years ago.
Wow, only 6 years ago, gosh. So this is quite a new thing then, isn't it, really? And look how you've turned.
Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing to be able to spend days like today out in shorts and a t-shirt and to really not worry, not that we're having much social contact with anybody at the moment, but even something as basic as, you know, going on a walk in the morning, and I've got a beautiful canal towpath that runs beside the house, and that would have been somewhere where I would have felt so self-conscious I would have needed to cover up. You think people can't be so blatantly rude or ignorant, but the comments I used to get, you know, in supermarket queues, I remember standing at the checkout and the lady saying, oh my gosh, have you been on holiday? You look like you've really burnt yourself. And, you know, you think, oh, there could have been a nicer way of asking that. And I was stood at check-in in Egypt coming back from Hurghada many years ago, and the girl at check-in in front of everybody in the queue asking, demanding to know if my skin was contagious because she wasn't going to let me on the flight if that was catching. And, you know, you stood there in front of all these people, and I actually thought on that day my skin had looked slightly better because I'd got a tan, and so I'd been brave enough to wear a vest top. And then you get a comment like that, and all you want to do is just shrink and hide. And so, yeah, all those various experiences, it still doesn't seem real that I can be dressed like this and feel confident. And so friends often say to me in the middle of winter, you're not freezing cold in that t-shirt, but it's still 6 years on, it's still a novelty for me to be able to feel
your skin
in my skin.
Absolutely. And it's so good that you are showing off your skin as well. So good. So it was really like reaching rock bottom that made you say, actually, something's got to change. Because
yeah, I think many of us reach that point, don't we, really, before a big transformation. I think sometimes we absolutely have to hit rock bottom. I've worked with lots of people since who struggle with their skin, and sometimes they begin the plan and then it kind of feels too difficult for them and they go off and they try other avenues, and then they come back to me sometimes a year or 2 years on and they say, right, I'm really doing this now because my skin has got to such a stage it's actually unbearable. And so sometimes I think we do have to get there to take drastic action in any form of illness. You know, we start looking for the alternatives, and it really doesn't help when the medical profession dismiss diet or what they would consider alternative treatments. And I've spoken to doctors since and said it's really frustrating. Why can't we see diet and these alternative treatments as the original source, and then look at medicine as an alternative if actually going back to basics doesn't work for somebody? I think so much chronic disease could be helped by diet and lifestyle change, and nothing complex. You know, a simple anti-inflammatory plant-based diet, gentle exercise, whether it's yoga, whether it's walking, whether it's running, and meditation and sleep. You know, it's so
sleep.
So simple. Yes,
it is.
I mean, sleep was huge for me. You know, I spent so much time itching at my skin at night and not being able to get a good night's sleep. And we don't realize how much that impacts the gut bacteria. And then, of course, it's a self-perpetuating circle because you haven't got enough of the bacteria that promotes a good night's sleep. And so you're not sleeping well, and then you're stressed over that. And then because you're stressed, your skin's flaring up. And it's so important to break that cycle.
Yeah, fantastic. So when you first started with your book Radiant, that was obviously, was that like a self-discovery for yourself? Like, you know, this is what I'm learning, I want to share with everyone. And then you were applying it to yourself.
Well, the book was written 4 years ago, so I was already a couple of years into my sort of transformation by then. And I actually started documenting it right away on Twitter at the time. And I think that part of that was accountability. You know, I thought if I document this, I'm going to have to keep it up for myself. And it really was a complete transformation for me, because I was going from somebody who would throw a pizza in the oven or, you know, cook a packet of cheap pasta with some tomato sauce out of a jar, and I would consider that a healthy meal, usually washed down with a couple of glasses of red wine. And then there were parts of my diet which I was aware were unhealthy but continued with. So I didn't really enjoy drinking coffee, but I still like the caffeine kick. So I drink Diet Coke in the morning, which is just now sounds awful, but that was sort of my wake up call, my hangover cure, my thirst quencher. And so I look back at all those things and think, oh my gosh, but to come away from all that, I really needed to set myself a strict 30-day plan and stick at it rigidly, and also document it and share it, because I knew that would help me stay on track. And after making these changes, a month later, I went out for dinner, and it was February. I still remember it was freezing cold up here in the north. And I went out for dinner with my dad, and I wore a short sleeve dress, and nobody commented. Nobody said anything, because my skin had healed to such an extent, bearing in mind that a month earlier, the doctor had wanted me on cancer medication. And my skin had healed to such an extent that nobody noticed. And I just thought, I cannot believe this is diet and that nobody has told me about this. So then it became a mission to share that with people. And I started my online blog, and I began sharing some of the recipes, because I love my food. So I didn't want this to feel boring or restrictive. I wanted to show people that it could be vibrant and exciting and enjoyable. And there was a lovely girl from Sweden who followed the program. And there was another girl in Cambridge in the UK, and another girl in Malaysia, and they were sort of the first 3 girls who got in touch with me via Twitter and had said, what is it that's worked for you? And so I just sent them a little PDF booklet of what I'd done. They followed it, and they sent me their results, and those results are in my book Radiant. So it was getting those results that made me think, okay, it's not just me, I really want to share this on an even bigger scale. And then through Radiant, we've now sold 26,000 copies around the world, which is just incredible. And of course, from that come the thousands of success stories which I share on my Instagram. And that's just lovely, because that is people who are picking up a book, who quite often have lost hope or have been told by the doctor there is no further treatment, there's nothing else they can try. And all of a sudden there's somebody saying to them, actually, you know, there is hope, there is something else. And it is fairly simple. It's not always easy, you know, it can be a tough challenge, but it is simple.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's all to do with your head, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm feeling a bit stressed, I'll have a biscuit.
But, you know, the stress of switching to something like juicing, if your diet hasn't been that. But this is where the enjoyment side comes in. And I really want to share with people that it doesn't have to feel, you don't have to feel you're going to be this miserable lettuce leaf eating bore. You know, I can't think of anything worse. I love a variety of foods. I love vibrant, enjoyable, tasty foods. I am a real foodie, and I would hate for anybody to think, oh, you know, this just sounds like eating rabbit food for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it's just
like that. So
brilliant, interesting, really. And that then led you to go on to like Dragon's Den.
Yes.
And it's like, my God, she's on there, whoa, and you got some investors, and it was like, yes, good for you. So tell us about that.
Amazing experience. I think I realized that as much as I could share the book with a lot of people, I still had to get this out there on a bigger platform. And, you know, some of the national newspapers, the Daily Mail, the Mirror, the Sun, they've shared my story, which is great because it means more people get to read it and feel inspired to make these changes and hear something different to what their GP or dermatologist might have been telling them, which in itself is brilliant. But I just thought, if I can get a bigger platform, if I can share this story on an even bigger scale, that would be incredible. And so the opportunity came up to audition for Dragon's Den. And I'd actually already auditioned the year before and had been turned down. And so I went back sort of knowing what to expect. And at this stage, I'd been working with a local aromatherapist on a range of natural skincare, because I thought, as important as it is in terms of what we're putting into our bodies, it's pointless if we're still applying the steroid creams or the thick petroleum-based emollients on the surface of the skin. They're not helping. So I developed this natural skincare range, and that was what I wanted to share on the Den. But more than anything, to tell my story, to hopefully inspire somebody else to make a change. And I think I'd thought through a lot of scenarios as to what might happen. One of my fears was that they would just sort of say, well, are you a dermatologist? Are you a doctor? Where are your qualifications? Because they could be quite scary, those dragons. And so I sort of thought through that scenario. And then I thought, oh my gosh, what if one of them offers me the investment? That would be amazing. And then I was stood there on the stage, and of course I was in that enviable position of all 5 dragons offering investment. Well, that was a scenario that no part of me had even considered. So I just wanted to phone a friend. It was just the scariest, sort of most intense process. And yeah, I walked away with Tej and Peter, who have just been brilliant. And of course, the fact that that story was then shared with tens of thousands of more people, and who have then since contacted me and have been inspired to make changes that's healed their skin. So it was incredible. The whole process was incredible, and I absolutely loved it. Even though it was one of the scariest moments of my life, I did absolutely love it.
And how, the night before that, because I know any form, even though it's positive stress, when you have that, it's not just diet that can affect your skin, is it? How did your skin get affected because of it, or your sleep or anything, or you've got in place lots of rituals that you do?
You know, for me, I know that stress massively impacts my skin. So I've been in situations where I've sort of let my own health deteriorate a little bit. I was running retreats at one point a few years ago, and I was so desperate to help other people to heal that I almost forgot about my own health as being important. So I was so busy running around trying to do things for everybody else. And I remember seeing those little telltale red dots appear on my arms, and I thought, okay, I've got to stop, I've got to take a break. I'm much more self-aware these days. With the Den, it was a little bit different because it was enjoyable stress. It was almost like that short-term burst of adrenaline, and not that chronic stress that is perpetually there. You know, this was just a short burst of, you've got to do this, and you've got to get up there, and you've just got to openly and honestly tell your story and hope that at least one of the dragons can see what you're trying to do. And so, yeah, of course, you know, I had a terrible night's sleep the night before. I knew I had to get up at 6 o'clock the next morning. I was so nervous that the skincare range was only finished and sent to me 2 days previous. The night before, I was still sticking the stickers on, paranoid that Peter Jones was going to tell me off for them not being straight. You know, all these little stressors, but actually it was an enjoyable pressure. I don't mind working under that
No,
stress.
no.
And, you know, then the result just had me on cloud nine for the last 6 months. So.
Fantastic. That's so good. So what if you were going to give 5 tips, because a lot of these people that are listening are actually therapists, they have clients that are struggling with whatever, maybe skin disorders and so on. What sort of like tips would you give to them to recommend? Obviously we'll pass your Instagram feed on to everybody because that's amazing in itself.
Well, I think, you know, the first thing that's really important, and I'm sure this is something that everybody here practices, but I think it's really important, is somebody to listen. Because I felt so much of the time when I went to my GP that they weren't actually hearing me. So they're looking at the problem on the surface of the skin and seeing it no deeper. They're not considering what's triggering the problem. They're not considering the mental health aspects. And I've spoken to so many clients who say, you know, they're not listening to me, and I've asked if it's a gut condition and they've dismissed that entirely, and I've told them I'm upset and they say, we'll take these antidepressants, and so they're not listening to me. So I think in a lot of these alternative, and I hate using the word alternative because I think it should be the primary source of therapy, but in a lot of alternative therapies there is more of an opportunity to listen, and I think people really appreciate that. So I think hearing the different aspects of somebody's life that it's impacting, and then helping them gently and gradually to break that circle. So if it is causing more stress, if it is causing a lack of sleep, really focusing on the parts that that particular patient is able to begin changing. And it could be something as simple as saying, look, next week, all I want you to focus on is for every single day to drink 2 litres of fresh water. It's something that so many of us are guilty of not doing. And it's such a simple thing, something that isn't going to cost anybody the earth. It's accessible for most of us in the Western world. 2 litres of still fresh water. Make a commitment to do that every single day. Yes, you'll be weeing lots for the first few days, but that does settle down. And actually, it's just such a simple way to keep our skin cells nourished and hydrated. So that is most definitely tip number 1. I would also recommend looking for something alternative to apply to the surface of the skin. So I've got a range of skincare, obviously, that's botanical and natural and cruelty-free and vegan and everything else. And without promoting mine specifically, there are still lots of changes that people can make. So something as simple as replacing those heavy petroleum-based ointments with coconut oil. Coconut oil is antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal. It's £3 at Tesco. It's just brilliant stuff, and it's great for on the hair, great for on the skin. It's just such a lovely, simple product to use. And actually it helps the skin to balance its pH, to manage its own oil production, which all gets disrupted when you're slathering skin in these thick, greasy, petroleum-based emollients. So switching to natural skincare, also considering if the patient is struggling with scalp psoriasis or any problems on the face, you know, looking at the shampoo and the hair care, because that's all dripping down our face and our skin and our scalp, and it can be really irritating, especially those that contain the parabens and the SLS and all these toxic ingredients. So that's my other tip. Yeah, look at skincare. Making changes to diet. And again, this might not be something that is quite as simple as transforming your entire diet in one go. But what doctors will acknowledge is that psoriasis, eczema, rosacea, that these are all chronic inflammatory skin conditions. So I would always question the doctor and say, well, how can you therefore suggest that an anti-inflammatory diet is not going to be beneficial? Of course it is going to have a beneficial impact. So a plant-based diet, and you know, this doesn't mean necessarily going 100% vegan, but incorporating lots more plants, lots more fruit and vegetables. If you don't feel that you can do that by piling up the veg on your plate, buying a juicer doesn't have to be expensive. You can get them for 20 quid on eBay. Buying a juicer, juicing lots of greens. Even my little godson Jack next door, he will not eat any greens on his plate, but he will drink kale and spinach and broccoli. He loves making those green juices. So I think that is another really useful piece of advice. Just incorporate lots more vitamins and nutrients through plant-based foods or juices. is another step I take. Looking at exercise. And again, you know, clients can be in different situations. Sometimes their weight or the pain they're in with a certain skin condition can prevent them from exercising. So I have clients with psoriasis on the soles of their feet who say, look, I literally can't walk, it's too painful. But actually, there are still exercises that you can do, or going to a local yoga class, and you don't have to get dressed up in all the lycra and feel self-conscious. A really cool, you know, cotton t-shirt and baggy jogging pants will do. And actually just getting the body moving encourages the lymphatic system to begin moving, which encourages the body to expel toxins. Such a simple process. And then the final point, I guess, would be management of stress. And there are so many ways in which we can do that. Actually, we can't change stress. Sometimes we are just impacted, whatever situation we're in. You know, we could be the most Zen Buddhist and we would still be impacted in some way by stress, especially with the crazy times we're living through at the moment. But what we can change is our reaction to it. Yes. So actually, if we learn to manage stress a little bit better, and I was the most stressed out person, my way to deal with it was always alcohol. You know, I'd be stressed, so I'll just pour a glass of wine, it'll be fine, the problems will disappear. And of course the problems are still there the next day, but then so is the hangover and the dehydrated skin and the feeling of not having any energy and everything else. So working on stress through meditation. It always sounds a little bit, you know, twee these days to talk about mindfulness and meditation, but it was a game changer for me. And if the client isn't really sure how to begin with any of those processes, apps such as Headspace and Calm can be so beneficial, because all you do is put headphones on and listen to somebody talk at you for 5 minutes, and don't worry about anything else. And it can transform you just for those 5 minutes, take you away to a different place. And actually you take the headphones off and you are in a completely different mindset for the rest of the day. So that is just a really simple way to begin working on and managing stress. And I think if you can pinpoint a client to work on any aspect of healing in this way, whether it is the stress management, the exercise, the food, the nutrition, the intake of water and hydration, what you're applying on the surface of the skin, once you begin transitioning onto that cycle of wellness, as opposed to the perpetual cycle of illness and you know, and non-well-being, actually everything else starts picking up momentum. So for me, working on stress, not drinking alcohol while I was inspired to eat a bit better. And actually, I then did have the energy to exercise. And then through having the energy to exercise, I wanted to eat better because I felt better. And then I did get a better night's sleep because I was exercising. And actually, it's self-perpetuating, but it's just starting that process somewhere. So I think finding the point at which the client finds it most comfortable to begin on that wheel can be really important, and everything else begins to come with it.
That's brilliant, brilliant. So good. And I know you've written loads of recipes as you've been sharing on Instagram and everything. And is that's in your new book? I haven't got your new book yet.
Radiant has got a lot of recipes already. So yeah, chocolate cake.
Mad to chocolate cake. Hey, my husband might be into making decent cakes now.
Yeah, I'm trying to find some other sort of quite different tasty. Oh, this is a good one. So this was using jackfruit to make tuna melts and jackfruit sandwiches, and the photography is really pretty as well. The other thing that I've included lots more of in this book is to make it simple for people to use slow cookers and to freeze things more and to just make it more practical, because I think that was the other thing. You know, I invested so much time in changing my diet, but I had the opportunity because I was self-employed at the time, and I asked my business partner if I could sort of take my foot off the pedal a little bit with work and really concentrate on myself. But when you've got kids and a family and a 9-to-5 job and everything else to look after at the same time, it can be a little bit difficult. So this book was about making it more manageable, about putting things in place to make the process easier. Instead of juicing a fresh juice 3 times a day, you know, juice once a week and bulk freeze it, for example. You know, so lots of little tips to make it more manageable as well. That's from feedback that I've had over the years.
Fantastic. It's so good. And I'm so grateful to you personally, because being a psoriasis sufferer myself, your book has, I'm not saying I follow it religiously, but it has really, really, really helped in lots of psychological stuff. So brilliant.
It's amazing. And you know, The
Check
intention was
turnaround.
never really that people needed to follow it 100%. That it can feel a little bit like that. You read the plan and it sounds very rigid. But the reason I wanted to make it that way was because I didn't want there to be any confusion or questions. I wanted to give people something that they could say, right, here it is in front of me. I don't need to think about anything else. I'm just going to do this. But the intention is that over time to gradually find your own balance in your own pathways. And the book is just really an introduction to that. And I think we all have these different aspects of our journey with twists and turns and bumps in the road. And we should all do what we feel best for ourselves. It's just
totally
a
get it.
Get us
totally get it. But you've helped so many people with your books. Now your new book, when it's not out on Amazon yet, is it?
No, so it's available for pre-order on Amazon. We were going to publish it officially just over a week ago, and then Amazon asked us, because they are trying to stock their warehouses with the essentials for customers who can't get out of the house, they asked if we could hold off filling the warehouse with more books. So we spoke with them and we decided to postpone it until August the 6th. So hopefully by then, we will all be living in a world that is a little bit more normal, and I'll be able to go out and chat about the book at festivals and events and bookshops, and once things start returning to a little bit of normality, because that's my favorite thing, sharing it in person, talking with people, meeting people. And it would be so sad if I don't get the opportunity to do that.
No, after all the hard work you put into it all, it'll be crazy. It'll be absolutely crazy. And you've also got products that you produce and they're selling in Holland and Barrett now.
Yeah, so the skincare products are part of the, we're all part of the program really. So I talk about the tea and the tincture in the book, and just to make it easier for people. So I have like the skin purity tea there. And then some of the products like the intensive scalp oil to help with, anyone who's struggling with scalp psoriasis. But the intention of these is not, I don't want people to believe that this is just something else they're going to apply to the surface of the skin and it's going to form their miracle cure, because that isn't it.
No.
And I'm really keen to stress that when people message me online and say, which cream do I need to clear my psoriasis? I always say, you need the book. And they'll say, no, but which cream? And I'll say, but the cream is not going to be a miracle solution, because no such thing exists.
No.
If it does, it's in the form of steroids, and when you stop using them, your skin is going to flare back twice as badly. So the cream is just there to offer additional support. It contains ingredients such as turmeric oil and chia seed oil and all these beneficial essential oils that can help calm the symptoms. But what we need to treat is the cause, and the cause is inside.
Yeah, brilliant. Are you open to taking some questions from any
people?
Because we've got people on the line at the moment. So could I ask if anyone's got any questions, please, to ask Hannah while we've got her? If you put it in the chat box, there's like a chat box below. That would be absolutely fantastic. That would be. Can you see the chat box?
Yeah, if you press the little chat button at the bottom of the screen, the chat box should come up. It just has.
Okay. Do you see the people that are also at the top?
Yes, I can see.
Oh, you do. Good.
Anna and Madalena and Cheryl.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. Is everyone being shy, do you think?
Yeah. Well, that and the fact that I've just babbled at you for 30 minutes. So
they're really shy. That's fair enough. Okay, all right then. So,
but if anybody's got anything they'd like to ask in private, or if they've got any clients who think they're struggling, my favorite thing is to answer questions. And I get about 200 direct messages a day at the moment on Instagram, so it can take a little while. But would I consider a professional range? Thank you. I can see that, Juliet. Do you know, that would be wonderful. There's a couple of things I've been asked for. So professional range with bigger size products. And also there are lots of stores apparently in the UK now where they are doing refillables. So you can literally sort of bulk sell, and then customers can come in and fill up their own containers. And I'd really love to be a part of that as well, because obviously the sustainability aspect is really important. And I can see Katie's question there as well. So dealing with highs, juicing can be really beneficial. So I don't know, Katie, if you've seen the Joe Cross film, Fat, Sick and Nearly Dead, but that was the condition that he was struggling with, and actually was something that he healed through juicing, and that was his introduction. And so I found his story and Jason Bale's story about juicing and how it helped their skin conditions, and that was kind of my inroad into learning the benefits of drinking our greens instead of eating them. So I would most definitely recommend you watch that movie, because I think that will put you on a path to learning a little bit more about the benefits of juicing for conditions like that.
Fantastic. Oh, or did you think, okay, Did you find Caroline?
Yeah.
This is one of my other students. Caroline, hang on, we're coming. Let's go back to Caroline.
I can see that. Did you find
Yeah.
a nutritionist to help you change your diet initially, or did you figure this out for yourself? So I figured it out for myself, but it was a lot of trial and error. And this was why I wanted to put things into a blog and into a book. And I do recommend to clients that using a nutritionist or a dietitian can be really beneficial, because it's just that extra step and extra hand holding. And quite often they go to the doctor with my book, and the doctor can be quite dismissive of it. Whereas if you take the book to a naturopath or a nutritionist, they can help you follow the plan, because they will understand much more the dietary benefits. So mine was very much through trial and error. I just talked about the juicing guys who I found and was inspired by. And I also looked up immune system regulation, because I understood the doctor's idea of suppressing the immune system, but I thought, what if we could regulate it? And I came across stories about curcumin, the active ingredient in turmeric. And that sort of led me onto this path of looking into the Japanese mushrooms and how they can be used with medicinal properties. And so that then made me start to think about food as medicine, rather than just, the sustenance to keep us going every day. And then I started to think about the positives and negatives with food. And it just led me into this whole journey with stacks of books that I've still got. And I kind of began absorbing anything and everything, bearing in mind I was in such a desperate position to heal that I just wanted to read more and more information. The more I learned, the more I was inspired to learn. So I guess when it came to me sharing my story, that was my inspiration for putting it in a really simple 28-day plan, because I just wanted someone to be able to pick it up and go, right, I'm going to do that. And there are still ways for people to adapt that to make it, more attainable, manageable for themselves. But I just wanted the sort of basics of the plan to be there. So
brilliant. And you've got another question. That was for Caroline Cockcroft. And you've got another one. So enthusiastic, so encouraging. Oh, it's infectious. We'll be looking forward to the new book.
Oh, that's so sweet, Galaxy. Thank you. So the new book is called Skin Healing Expert. When I wrote the first book, my publishers were a little bit sort of nervous, because obviously they'd seen my pictures and heard my story, and they'd seen the pictures of the other people following my blog. But it's still quite a big thing for a publisher to sort of take that on a new author. And so they decided to go for the title Radiant, because it's a little bit fluffy and soft, and it sort of says radiant and glowing, and that was all very lovely. But with this book, they were like, right, you've earned your stripes now. You are the skin healing expert. We'll go out there and tell people that. So yeah, it's called Skin Healing Expert, which is, awesome. And I can see Elle there as well saying this is similar to the liver friendly diet that I've been researching. So many of these diets have so many similarities, and on the surface it just sounds like common sense, really, following an alkaline diet, anti-inflammatory, that contains lots of vegetables and fruits and nuts and seeds and some legumes and grains. And this all makes complete logical sense. And I think a lot of these diets have so much in common, because they are beneficial for a whole variety of chronic ailments. And we hear the gut talked about so much more. I know you said you had a gut expert on as well, which is just brilliant, because science is now looking at the gut as playing such an integral role. 70% of our immune system lives there. So if we can work on a gut-friendly diet, which this is, then that's going to impact so many different diseases. And of course, the liver. Part of my range includes milk thistle to support the liver. And that's because the liver is integral. If we overburden the liver, it looks to our biggest organ of detoxification for support, and that's our skin. So everything it can't deal with, it's going to send to our skin. And that's, of course, what it was doing with alcohol. I was feeding it a poison, and it was going, you're drinking too much. I can't process this. Plus deal with the stress, plus deal with the Diet Coke that you're pouring in every day. This is too much, and then it turns to the skin, and it all comes out in the skin, and that's where we get the problem. So
fabulous,
fabulous. It's similar to that. And I think it's always interesting and intriguing to look at diet, and to look at, sometimes looking at, the ancient Chinese way of practicing something. So looking at the connection between diet and organs and emotions, grief that's held in the lungs. I was talking with a lovely lady on my podcast, Nikki, about this. The Chinese associate with organs in our body with certain aspects of our emotions, and you think that isn't even talked about in Western medicine. So if we're holding grief or stress or sadness, it can impact our skin as well through the kidneys or the liver or the lungs. We think about ourselves, because of the way GPs practice, are so disjointed. You've got an ailment, so this is to treat that exact ailment. This will cure this. We forget that our mind and our brain is connected to the skin, which is connected to our liver, which is connected to the kidneys, and we are this one being that gets separated into all these different parts. And so when we talk about the holistic approach, I like to spell it whole, WHOLE, the holistic approach, to look at the whole body, the whole human being, because I think that bit gets forgotten sometimes in the way that we treat people with medicine.
Fantastic. I've got a question for you, actually. I see that you have an allotment, or you garden, or you grow your own veg, and you've only just started.
Yes, and you know, it's awful really. When I bought the cottage that I live in here in the Peak District, bought it 8 years ago now, and part of the reason I bought it was because it came with this allotment, and I thought, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be that countryside gardening girl. And for the first year, I tried to plant some veg. They didn't grow very well. And I thought, right, well, I can't do that. And so I left it, embarrassingly, 6 years. And it was only last year when my father said to me, I'll help you with this. You know, I'll help you grow some food. And we began sorting out the beds, which had all gotten overgrown, and there were thistles everywhere. We really got everything sort of ready and sorted. And then this year, I just really got into it because of lockdown. It was my sanctuary, my opportunity to spend time outside in nature, and the gratitude that I have for having that space, which, you know, I'd taken for granted for so many years. And so now I've got peas and onions and kale and spinach, and it's just really lovely. It's a massive learning process for me. I'm still failing at a lot of it, but learning as I go. And it also has sort of brought me closer to this amazing Instagram community of gardeners who are always there to support and to give me advice and all these different things that I'm learning. So that's been such a lovely process through lockdown. I've really enjoyed it. I feel like I'm getting old. I'm loving gardening, going for walks by the canal, all these things that I laughed at my parents for 10 years ago.
Oh, that's lovely. It's really, really nice. Has anyone got any questions before we put closure on this? We've got 5 more minutes.
Thank you so much, guys, for the It's been really nice. I've loved chatting, and it's just, yeah, really nice that people are learning and appreciating it. So I love sharing my story.
It's just been so lovely having you on. Really, really has. And I
also hope that people would go to my Instagram page, because I think until you see those before and after pictures, I think those really tell the story. So, you know, some of these people that share their own stories, and there are now thousands on my page, it's just incredible. Not only do they share the before and after pictures, which in themselves are astounding, but they share their words and their story in their own words. And I find it so inspiring. And I say to every single person who does it, you have no idea how many people you are going to go on to help just by sharing your story. Some of these people, you wonder how they were ever able to leave the house, because they must have been in so much pain with the skin conditions that they've been struggling with. And when you see what diet and lifestyle does for them, and you read how they've tried medicine and they've tried these conventional routes, and then they try something as simple as switching diet, it's just, amazing.
It is. And it's never straightforward and easy, is it? It does take work to do it, you know, because it shows.
And it
shows.
But I think once you've done it, you know, this isn't forever, so you don't need to stress that you're going to be on this boring, miserable diet for the rest of your life. There is a balance to be found. And there was a lot of things I chose not to go back to. So alcohol is an example. I quit 6 years ago. I never said I was quitting forever, and there's just no interest for me at all to go back. I think in lockdown, that's exactly what I would have been doing 6 years ago, enjoying a drink from midday onwards. You know, I was a party girl. I loved going out at weekends. I loved my bottles of red wine. I really did. And I'm just so pleased that isn't me anymore. So alcohol, I never went back to. But of course, you know, if a friend's having a birthday party and there's cake, I'm not going to be the one that constantly says, I can't have that. I can't eat that. I don't want that. You know, I find a balance that works for me. I just don't let that balance slip back into old habits. So I definitely think it's about finding a balance going forward that makes life, you know, just as much fun.
Yes, good. And Cheryl said, thank you for this. You're an inspirational speaker. That's lovely. And Ellie's put as well. That is so cool. So cool. Well, thank you again. Really, really appreciate it. And
thank you.
Yeah, what else can I say? You're an inspiration to so many people. And I think it's once you've had psoriasis that, you know, you realise the effect it can have on you and how much you change people's lives, really.
Yeah.
There is. It is.
It's amazing. And I think that opportunity to speak to people who have gone from feeling insular and depressed and miserable about their skin, and watching how it changes them. It's just incredible. Oh, this is so lovely, all the comments. So Karen saying, I'm looking after my herb garden again. That's just brilliant. And Katie, oh, thank you. Yeah, just so lovely. So lovely.
And she's put, this is how I started my journey into this industry. Absolutely.
I think that's
brilliant.
it, isn't it? You know, when we talk about these journeys, and if we've been through something so personal, I think the clients and the patients that we speak to can relate to us so much more. And at the moment, it's really interesting. I'm working with 5 separate doctors who are trying to heal their skin, and they've come to me, and I said to them, you know, it's so amazing. One couple in particular who are both doctors, and she said, you know, my husband was stood in front of his peers, essentially stripped naked, with them pointing and making clinical, you know, having a clinical conversation, and she said he felt so worthless and self-conscious, and just in a 5-minute conversation with you, he's felt heard and listened to and understood. And she said, it will make us go about our jobs differently in the future, and we will listen to patients differently. And you think, this is so incredible, that the spiral, the knock-on effect that can have. So Katie, I think that's amazing. I think if you've got a personal story that's then got you into changing the way that you look at things, or practicing, you know, and helping other people, I think it just has that ripple effect, and that goes on and on and on. So I think it's brilliant.
Yay. Okay, well, thank you again. And I just, to let everyone know, your book, your original book, was Radiant. If they want to follow you on Instagram, can you let them know? It's
My Goodness Recipes. So it's all a little bit confusing. You can search for me by name as Hannah Solito, but it's My Goodness Recipes is my actual Instagram tag. I wanted the title of the first book to be My Goodness, so it was all set to work, and then the publishers wanted it to be Radiant, and then we had a big argument about it, and so then I was like, I can't change my Instagram name now. So I really like My Goodness Recipes, because my goodness is the reaction to the food, it's the reaction to the skin transformation. So I think it really works. So yeah, but if anybody's got any further questions, please do direct message me, and I really do try to get back to everybody as quickly as possible.
That's the best thing. You actually do, because some people don't respond at all.
No, I really do try.
It's really, really important. And your new book, like, can we just order that on Amazon? So
on Amazon it will show that it's available for purchase. You can click it, but it will say that it's a pre-order. And then if Amazon drop the price in the meantime, they will ensure that you are paying the lower price. You don't actually pay until the date of publication. So the money won't leave your account till August, but it does ensure that you will get a copy, and we're hoping for serialization in some of the big newspapers, so hopefully this one is going to sell out pretty quick, which will be amazing.
Brilliant. Oh, that's great. So better get in there quickly. I'm going to get in there straight after. That's good. That's really good. And Karen said, I'm going to be buying this book.
Oh, thank you, Karen. That's awesome. And I noticed Caroline there as well saying this was so interesting. So that's really sweet as well. Thank you.
That's great. Well, thank you again. And I'll see you on Instagram.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye-bye.